The patrol ship drifted through the darkness of space, its sensors scanning the usual route along the border of Council territory. Officer Reed stared at his monitor, fighting back another yawn. It was his 5th year on border duty, and each shift felt longer than the last. The Council insisted on maintaining these patrols, though no one had challenged their authority in over 3 centuries. The alarm's sudden blare made him jump in his seat. A red dot appeared on his screen, marking an unknown vessel crossing into restricted space. Reed straightened up, his 4 hands moving quickly across the control panel. This was not one of the usual merchant ships that sometimes strayed off course. "Captain, we have an unregistered vessel in Sector 7, he called out, his voice echoing through the command center. "Energy readings are strange." Captain Moore floated to the observation deck, her scaled skin reflecting the soft blue light of the instruments. She studied the readings with growing confusion. The ship's energy signature didn't match anything in their database, and its movement patterns defied normal space travel logic. "Send the standard warning," she ordered, following protocol despite her unease. The message went out in all known languages. "You have entered Council space. Power down your engines and prepare for inspection." No response came. Reed adjusted the scanners, trying to get a better read on the mystery ship. "Captain, their hull appears to be made of metal, and their propulsion system seems to use primitive warp technology." The bridge crew exchanged amused looks. Only developing species still used metal hulls and basic warp drives. This would be a simple containment operation. Captain Moore activated the ship's immobilization field, a standard tool for dealing with wayward vessels. The field reached out, ready to hold the intruder in place, and passed right through it. The unknown ship continued its course, completely unaffected. "Impossible," Moore whispered. She had never seen anything resist an immobilization field. "Launch probe droids. I want visual confirmation." The droids shot out into space, their cameras focused on the approaching vessel. The image that appeared on the main screen made the entire crew fall silent. The ship was sleek despite its metallic construction, painted a deep black that seemed to swallow light. No visible weapons broke its smooth surface, but something about its design spoke of barely contained power. Reed's console lit up with new data. "Captain, I'm detecting energy buildups throughout their hull, but I can't identify the source, and their warp signature. It's like it's there and not there at the same time." Moore felt a chill run down her spine. In 300 years of Council dominance, no one had managed to surprise them like this. "Open a direct channel," she ordered. "All frequencies." The response came immediately, but not as a voice. Text scrolled across their screens in perfect Council standard. "HMS Thunderchild acknowledges your greeting. We will be continuing our scheduled patrol. Any attempt at interference will be considered an act of aggression." Patrol. Moore's scales bristled. This is Council space. No one else has patrol rights here. She turned to her weapons officer. "Target their engines. Low power. Warning shots only." The patrol ship's energy cannons charged, their targeting systems locking onto the Thunderchild. But the moment they fired, the strange vessel shifted. The shots passed through empty space, and the ship reappeared 50 kilometers to their left. Reed's hands shook as he worked his controls. "Captain, they're still there, but our sensors can't get a solid lock. It's like trying to grab smoke." The Thunderchild moved past them with deliberate slowness, its presence a clear challenge to everything the Council stood for. As it passed, one final message appeared on their screens. "Your sensors will record this encounter as a sensor malfunction. Your weapons log will show no shots fired. This meeting never happened. Remember that." Then it was gone, leaving no trace it had ever been there. The patrol ship's databanks updated themselves exactly as the message had predicted, erasing all evidence of the encounter. Captain Moore stared at the now empty space, understanding that everything had just changed. Somewhere out there, an unknown species had mastered technology that made the Council's best defenses look primitive, and they had chosen to reveal themselves in the most unsettling way possible, by proving they could have remained hidden if they wished. She looked down at her trembling hands. They needed to report this to the council immediately. But what exactly would they report? That a ghost ship had appeared, ignored their most powerful systems, and vanished. That this ghost had worn the name Thunderchild and claimed to be human. Trade ships waited in long lines at the council checkpoints, their crews growing more frustrated by the hour. The delays had become common in the past month, ever since the rumors started. No one officially confirmed anything, but every pilot had heard the whispers about the ghost ship. Tom Baker, captain of the merchant vessel Star Runner, watched as another council patrol swept past his ship. Their scanners buzzed over his cargo for the third time that day. He knew they weren't really looking for contraband. They were searching for something else. Another delay. His first mate grumbled, checking their delivery schedule. The council's going to drive us all out of business at this rate. Tom nodded, his eyes fixed on the patrol ship's movements. The council vessels used to move with confidence, like they owned every star in the galaxy. Now they traveled in groups, their sensors constantly active, jumping at shadows. The comm system crackled. Attention all vessels. Maintain position. Security scan in progress. The same message they'd heard a dozen times today. A flash of movement caught Tom's eye. At first, he thought it was just space debris. But then he saw it clearly. A massive black ship, sliding between the stars like oil on water. The council patrols didn't react. Their sensors showed nothing, but Tom knew what he was seeing. The ghost ship was real. The Thunderchild, as some called it, moved through the checkpoint area without hesitation. It passed close enough to Tom's ship that he could see the subtle patterns in its black hull, designs that seemed to shift and change as he watched them. Trade channel frequencies exploded with chatter as other captains spotted the vessel. The council patrols scrambled to respond, but they were always looking in the wrong place, chasing sensor readings that led nowhere. Military Command, this is Checkpoint 7, one of the council officers broadcasted, forgetting to switch to their secure channel. We have multiple civilian reports of the unknown vessel. Request immediate assistance. The response came quickly. Negative, Checkpoint 7. Our sensors show no unauthorized vessels in your sector. Civilian reports are unreliable. Maintain standard protocols. Tom couldn't help but smile. The mighty council, with all their advanced technology, couldn't even admit what was happening right in front of them. Their own systems were being used against them, making them doubt their eyes. The Thunderchild completed its pass through the checkpoint, leaving chaos in its wake. Some ships reported their navigation systems showing impossible readings. Others found their cargo manifests temporarily scrambled, though nothing was actually missing. It was like the ghost ship was testing responses, probing defenses, but never causing real harm. Later that evening, after the council finally cleared them to proceed, Tom sat in his cabin reviewing the day's events. His ship's log had recorded something interesting, a brief text message that appeared and disappeared from his communication system. Mapping trade routes. Civilian vessels not targeted. Carry on with standard operations. TC. Word spread quickly through the merchant channels. The ghost ship wasn't attacking anyone. It was gathering information. Some captains reported similar messages, each offering a small glimpse into the vessel's purpose. It was studying council space, learning its patterns, its weaknesses. The council's response grew more desperate. They doubled patrols, installed new sensor arrays, and required all ships to transmit identification codes constantly. But the Thunderchild slipped through every net, appeared on every sensor screen exactly long enough to be seen, then vanished again. In spaceport bars across council space, pilots shared stories. They talked about how the ghost ship moved in ways that should be impossible, how it seemed to predict patrol patterns, how it could shut down council technology at will. But most importantly, they talked about what it meant. It's human, a veteran pilot told anyone who would listen. The Council told us humans were primitive, barely able to reach their own moon. But look at what they built. Look at what one ship can do to the mighty Council. The Council's grip on power had always relied on their technological superiority. Now, every time the Thunderchild appeared, that superiority crumbled a little more. It never fired a shot, never made a threat, but its very existence was changing everything. As Tom prepared his ship for another run through Council space, he found himself hoping to catch another glimpse of the ghost ship. Not because it was spectacular to see, though it was, but because it represented something everyone needed right now. Proof that the Council could be challenged. Proof that humanity had earned its place among the stars, whether the Council liked it or not. The old research facility deep beneath the Pacific Ocean had been Commander Wilson's home for the past 5 years. He stood at the observation window, watching the Thunderchild's prototype taking shape in the massive underwater construction bay. The memory of that day, the day everything changed, still burned bright in his mind. 5 years earlier, he had been a regular Navy officer, commanding a submarine on routine patrol. His crew had detected something strange, signals that didn't match any known pattern. At first, they thought it was a glitch, but the signals kept coming. They weren't random. They were alien communications. The higher-ups had known about the aliens for years. Listening posts hidden across the solar system had been picking up their transmissions, learning their language, understanding their technology. What they discovered had chilled them to the bone. The Galactic Council didn't welcome new species. They controlled them. Wilson ran his hand along the cold glass of the observation window. "Show me the stealth test results," he said to the facility's computer. Holographic displays lit up around him, showing data from the latest trials. The prototype's hull absorbed radar, light, and even gravity waves. It could slip through space like a shadow, leaving no trace of its passage. "Commander," a voice called from behind him. Dr. Wells, the head scientist, hurried over with a tablet in her hands. "The quantum drive tests exceeded our expectations. We can match their fastest ships, maybe even outrun them." Wilson nodded, remembering the Council transmission they'd intercepted 2 years ago. The aliens had dismissed humanity as barely worth monitoring. They expected Earth to need another century before achieving proper spaceflight. They had no idea what was coming. The facility buzzed with activity as engineers and scientists rushed to complete their work. Project Shadow had brought together the best minds on Earth, all working in secret to create something unprecedented. The Thunderchild wasn't just a ship, it was humanity's answer to a hostile universe. The Council's ships relied too much on their advanced technology, Wilson explained to a group of new recruits. They've forgotten the basics of warfare: deception, surprise, the unexpected approach. We're building something they can't understand because it doesn't follow their rules. The prototype's weapon systems were unconventional. Instead of energy weapons, they had developed ghost missiles that phased through shields. The hull could generate false sensor readings, making the ship appear to be in multiple places at once. Even the communication system was designed to hack and manipulate Council technology. Dr. Wells pulled up another display, showing the ship's internal systems. "The crew quarters are finished," she said. "We've managed to make them comfortable despite all the stealth systems. Maintaining morale was always part of the mission parameters." Wilson remembered writing those parameters himself. The Thunderchild would operate alone, far from home, carrying the hopes of humanity with it. The crew would need more than just training. They would need determination, creativity, and the will to face the unknown. Late that night, Wilson sat in his office, reviewing the final mission briefing. The Council had to be tested, their weaknesses found, their arrogance exposed. But it had to be done carefully, strategically. One wrong move could bring their full might down on Earth before humanity was ready. The computer chimed, displaying a message from Earth Command. Thunderchild cleared for final trials. Crew selection approved. Mission start in 30 days. Wilson stood up and walked back to the observation window. The prototype. No, he corrected himself. The Thunder Child gleamed under the construction bay lights. Its black hull seemed to draw in the light around it, a predator waiting to be unleashed. "They think we're primitive," he whispered to himself. "They think we're trapped on our little world, decades away from reaching the stars. Let them think that. Let them dismiss us. When the Thunder Child appears in their space, when it shows them what humanity can really do, they'll learn their mistake." The ship's name had been his choice. Like its namesake from Wells' War of the Worlds, this Thunder Child would stand against a seemingly invincible enemy. But unlike the fictional vessel, this one wouldn't be fighting for humanity's survival. It would be fighting for humanity's right to forge its own destiny among the stars. The council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as the human delegation walked in. 3 simple metal chairs had been placed before the raised platform where the council members sat. The aliens whispered among themselves. Their translators switched off to prevent the humans from hearing their private conversations. Wilson sat in the center chair, flanked by 2 Earth diplomats. He wore his naval uniform, its simple blue and gold design standing out among the elaborate robes of the council members. The Thunder Child floated in space above them. Its presence felt even though it remained invisible to their sensors. High Counselor Rex, a tall being with silvery skin, raised his hand for silence. "You have violated council space," he announced, his translator making the words sound flat and cold. "Your unauthorized vessel has disrupted trade routes and caused widespread panic. Explain yourselves." Wilson smiled slightly. "Unauthorized. Interesting choice of words. When exactly did we authorize you to make decisions about Earth's development?" The council chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. No species had ever questioned the council's authority so directly. Rex's skin flickered with patterns of anger and surprise. "We have guided countless species toward enlightenment," another council member said. "It is our duty, our right." "We found your plans," Wilson interrupted, pulling out a data crystal. "Should I play the recording of your latest session? The one where you discussed how to guide Earth's development by sabotaging our more advanced research facilities." The crystal glowed in his hand. The council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their private conversations suddenly stopping. Wilson had struck a nerve, and everyone knew it. "The Thunder Child has been watching you for months," he continued, "recording your ship's movements, your communications, your secret meetings. We know exactly how you guide species that show too much promise." A younger council member leaned forward. "Impossible. Your technology is primitive. You couldn't have." Wilson pressed a button on his wrist device. Suddenly, every screen in the chamber showed the same image, recorded footage from inside this very room, taken during a private council session just days ago. The council members watched themselves discussing Earth's future, their own words condemning them. "Primitive," Wilson asked quietly. "We let you think that. We let you see what you wanted to see. While you were watching our public space program, counting our satellites, measuring our radio signals, we were building something you couldn't detect. Something that could move through your space like a ghost." High Counselor Rex stood up, his anger now visible. "You dare threaten the council? One ship, no matter how advanced, cannot stand against our fleet. Who said anything about one ship?" Wilson's smile grew wider. "The Thunder Child was just a test, a proof of concept. Do you really think Earth would send its only advanced vessel to provoke you?" The lie rolled smoothly off his tongue. The Thunder Child was indeed unique, but the council didn't need to know that. Let them wonder how many more ghost ships Earth might have hidden away. "We're not here to threaten you," one of the Earth diplomats added, following the planned script. "We're here to negotiate. As equals." Wilson placed a document on the table before them. "These are our terms. Earth will join the galactic community, but as a free and independent power. No guidance, no interference, no secret plans to slow our development." "And if we refuse?" Rex asked, though his voice had lost some of its confidence. "Then we continue our observations," Wilson said calmly. "We keep watching, keep recording, Keep gathering evidence of your manipulation of other species. How many of your member races would stay loyal if they learned the truth about their enlightened leaders? The council chamber fell silent. The power dynamic had shifted, and everyone could feel it. Humanity hadn't come begging for acceptance. They had come with leverage, with evidence, with power the council couldn't counter. High Counselor Rex slowly sat back down, his silver skin now dull with defeat. "We will consider your terms." Wilson stood up, straightening his uniform. "You have one standard day to decide. The Thunder Child will remain in orbit until then. Consider it a reminder of what humanity can achieve when we put our minds to it." As the human delegation left the chamber, the council members couldn't help but stare at their backs. They had expected to meet primitive beings seeking approval. Instead, they had met equals who had outplayed them at their own game. The council fleet appeared from hyperspace in perfect formation. 50 warships surrounding Nexus Station, their weapons charged and ready. They had waited until the human delegation left the station before launching their surprise attack. No one would expect the council to break their own rules about violence near diplomatic centers. Wilson watched them from the Thunder Child's bridge, his expression calm despite the odds. "Right on schedule," he said quietly. "They're exactly as predictable as we thought." The council's command channel crackled to life. "Unknown vessel Thunder Child, you are surrounded. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. This is your only warning." The bridge crew looked at Wilson, waiting for his order. He had trained them for this moment, prepared them for what seemed like an impossible battle. Now it was time to show what their ship could really do. "Launch ghost missiles, scattered pattern," Wilson commanded. "Let's show them why we named our weapons after spirits." The Thunder Child's missile bays opened silently. The weapons shot out, their phase shift drives making them virtually invisible. Council shields flared as the missiles passed straight through them, detonating against the hulls they were supposed to protect. "Impossible." The council commander's voice shook with rage. "All ships, open fire. Destroy that human vessel." Energy beams and plasma torpedoes filled space, creating a web of destruction that no ship should have been able to escape. But the Thunder Child moved like its namesake, a force of nature, untouchable and unstoppable. "Activating Shadow Drive," Wilson's navigator announced. The ship split into 5 identical images, each one moving in a different direction. Council gunners fired frantically, unable to tell which target was real or if any of them were. Wilson smiled as the council fleet broke formation, ships turning to chase different phantom images. "They still think in straight lines," he said to his crew. "They never learned to look up or down in space battle. Execute Operation Descent." The real Thunder Child dove straight down relative to the council fleet's plane of movement, passing beneath their ships while they chased shadows. More ghost missiles launched upward, striking engines and weapon systems with surgical precision. "Sir, they're adapting," the sensor officer called out. "They're trying to establish a 3-dimensional search pattern." "Too late," Wilson replied. "Execute Operation Ghostlight." The Thunder Child's special weapon activated, a system that turned the Council's own sensor networks against them. Suddenly, every ship in the Council fleet saw hundreds of phantom signals, their computers overwhelmed by false data. Confusion turned to chaos as Council ships fired at non-existent targets. Some vessels accidentally hit their allies, their advanced targeting systems thoroughly compromised. The mighty fleet that had gathered to destroy one human ship was tearing itself apart. "Council Command, this is Thunder Child." Wilson broadcast on all frequencies. "We could have destroyed your entire fleet. Instead, we chose to disable your weapons and engines. Consider this a demonstration of human military doctrine. Achieve victory while minimizing loss of life." He watched as the Council ships drifted, their main systems offline, their crews frantically trying to restore power. Nexus Station's observers had recorded everything. Soon the entire galaxy would know that a single human vessel had defeated the Council's best fleet without causing a single death. "Sir," his communications officer spoke up, "we're receiving surrender signals from multiple council vessels. They're requesting emergency power to maintain life support." Wilson nodded. "Provide them with emergency power. Show them that humanity knows how to win with honor." He turned to face his crew. "The council thought they could ambush us, use overwhelming force to destroy the upstart humans. Instead, they learned something important today." The Thunder Child moved through the disabled fleet, its black hull now visible to all, its presence a statement that could not be ignored. Council ships that had arrived in perfect formation now floated in disarray, their crews alive but thoroughly defeated. "They learned that humanity doesn't play by their rules," Wilson continued. "We don't need overwhelming force. We don't need numeric superiority. We just need ingenuity, determination, and the will to forge our own path among the stars." As emergency crews from Nexus Station began helping the disabled council ships, the message was clear. Humanity had arrived on the galactic stage, not as servants or subjects, but as a force to be reckoned with. The Thunder Child had proved that one ship with the right technology and the right crew could change the balance of power forever. Deep within Nexus Station's archives, Wilson stood before a wall of holographic displays. Each screen showed a different piece of evidence that the Thunder Child had gathered during its months of surveillance. But what they had found in the station's sealed records was far worse than anyone had imagined. "Play file 7249, he ordered. The main screen lit up with an ancient recording. The beautiful green world appeared, its cities shining under three suns. The date stamp showed it was from 500 years ago. The next image showed the same planet today. A dead rock, its atmosphere stripped away, its people long gone. They called themselves the Brightwings," the station's old librarian said quietly. He was breaking countless laws by helping Wilson, but after the battle, he couldn't stay silent anymore. "They developed clean energy technology that would have made the Council's power systems obsolete. The Council declared them a threat to galactic stability." Wilson's hands tightened into fists as he watched more records play out. World after world, species after species, all erased from history. Some were destroyed openly, declared threats to peace. Others simply vanished, their achievements forgotten, their names erased from galactic records. The Skywalkers developed artificial gravity without Council help. They'd vanished during a natural disaster. The Ring Builders created new forms of faster-than-light travel. Their sun mysteriously went nova. The librarian's voice shook with emotion. "I've watched this pattern repeat for 300 years. Any species that shows too much independent progress gets eliminated." Wilson finished. Earth was next on their list, wasn't it? The librarian nodded, pulling up more files. "They've been watching Earth for decades. Your rapid technological progress, your unique approach to problems, it frightened them. They had plans in motion to trigger environmental disasters, economic collapse, anything to slow you down." Wilson connected his data pad to the archive system. The Thunder Child's recordings began playing alongside the historical records. Council ships moving in secret, weapons tests in forbidden sectors, private meetings where they planned the fate of entire species. "They call themselves Guardians," the librarian said bitterly. "They claim they guide younger species toward enlightenment, but really, they're afraid. Afraid of change, afraid of losing control, afraid of any species that might become their equals." A signal chimed on Wilson's communicator. The Thunder Child's crew had finished copying all the archive data. Humanity now had proof of everything. The Council's crimes, their lies, their centuries of manipulation and destruction. "We need to show this to everyone," Wilson said. "Not just the Council members, but every species under their control. They all deserve to know the truth." The librarian looked afraid. "The Council's information control is absolute. They monitor every transmission, every data stream. You'd never get the truth out." Wilson smiled. "They monitor everything they can detect. But the Thunder Child doesn't play by their rules, remember. He activated his ship's comm system. Bridge, prepare for Operation Lightbringer. Use the shadow network we mapped. Send the data to every colony, every outpost, every ship in Council space. The archive screens flickered as the Thunderchild began its broadcast. Using the stealth technology that made it invisible to Council sensors, the ship sent the truth along paths the Council couldn't detect or block. In thousands of locations across the galaxy, beings of all species watched in horror as centuries of lies were exposed. They'll try to deny it, the librarian warned. They'll call it human propaganda. Let them, Wilson replied. The evidence is clear. Every species they've destroyed, every world they've ruined, every lie they've told, it's all here. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore. We're fighting for justice for every species they've harmed. As the data continued to spread, Wilson looked at the final image on the main screen. Earth, beautiful and blue, photographed by a Council scout ship. Their report had labeled it potentially problematic, requires immediate intervention. They thought they could decide humanity's fate, Wilson said quietly. Instead, we're going to help decide theirs, not through destruction like they did to others, but through truth. Sometimes the strongest weapon isn't a gun or a bomb. It's information that people have been kept from knowing. The Thunderchild's broadcast reached further and further into space, breaking centuries of Council control with every transmission. The truth was free now, spreading like wildfire among the stars, and nothing the Council could do would stop it. The Great Council chamber looked very different now. Where once only Council members had sat in the elevated seats, representatives from dozens of species now filled the rows. The Thunderchild floated visibly above the station, its black hull gleaming in the light of 3 suns. No more hiding in shadows. This was a time for truth in the open. Wilson stood at the center of the chamber, wearing his dress uniform. Behind him, the massive screen showed scenes from across the galaxy. Ships from formerly suppressed civilizations emerged from hiding, sharing technology that the Council had tried to destroy. Worlds that had been marked for intervention celebrated their newfound freedom. For centuries, the Council claimed to be guardians of peace and progress. Wilson addressed the gathered representatives. Today, we create something new, the Galactic Alliance, not built on control and fear, but on cooperation and respect. The former High Counselor Rex watched from a simple chair, his once magnificent robes replaced by plain clothing. The evidence of the Council's crimes had been too overwhelming to deny. Many Council members had already faced justice for their actions. Others had chosen to help build the new system, sharing their knowledge to help right past wrongs. Humanity's introduction to galactic society was unusual, Wilson continued, allowing himself a small smile. We came not as supplicants seeking permission to join your stars, but as defenders against corruption. The Thunderchild proved that technology alone doesn't determine a species' worth. Innovation, determination, and moral courage matter more than fleet size or economic power. A representative from the Brightwing survivors stood up. Their world had been destroyed, but some of their people had escaped, hiding for centuries. We support the Alliance, she announced. Earth has shown us that resistance to tyranny is not futile, that even a single ship with the right crew and the right cause can change the galaxy. More representatives rose, pledging their support. Species that had been enemies under Council rule now spoke of cooperation. The Thunderchild's revelations had broken down centuries of artificial barriers and forced isolation. Wilson activated a holographic display in the chamber center. It showed the new trading routes and diplomatic channels being established. Free exchange of ideas and technology was already leading to breakthroughs that the Council had tried to prevent. Earth doesn't seek to replace the Council as rulers of the galaxy, he said firmly. The Alliance will have no supreme power. Each species will govern itself, with the Alliance providing a forum for cooperation and mutual defense. The time of guided development is over. The Thunderchild's crew watched from their ship as Wilson spoke. They had succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. What had started as a mission to protect Earth had turned into a revolution that freed countless species from oppression. Dr. Wells, who had helped build the Thunderchild, sent a message from Earth that appeared on the chamber screens. The ship we built in secret to defend humanity ended up defending all of us. It proved that sometimes the greatest victory isn't destroying your enemy, but exposing the truth they try to hide. As the session ended, Wilson walked through the station's corridors. Beings of all species nodded respectfully as he passed. Many of them wore pins showing the Thunderchild's distinctive silhouette. It had become a symbol of hope and change. Back on the ship's bridge, Wilson wrote his final report to Earth Command. The Thunderchild's mission is complete. We set out to protect Earth from the Council's interference. We discovered that the real threat wasn't their military power, but their suppression of progress and cooperation. By exposing their crimes, we didn't just save Earth. We helped free every species that dreamed of choosing their own path among the stars. He looked out at the station, where ships of all designs now docked freely. The Council's rigid standardization was giving way to beautiful diversity. New technologies were being shared, new friendships were being formed, and new possibilities were opening up every day. They thought we weren't ready for the stars, Wilson said quietly. We proved we've been ready all along. Not just ready to travel space, but ready to make it better. The Thunderchild didn't just win a battle. It helped create a future where every species can reach for the stars without fear.